Today, we're giving answers to your toughest church social media questions.
And these are the types of questions you likely won't find answers for in search engines.
Why? Well, because they're too specific, too obscure, or too niche to the church world.
The kinds of questions that leave you uncertain about your approach to social, and if you're doing it right at all.
Let's dive in! Well, hey there, and welcome to the Pro Church Tool Show. We're here to help you and your church navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm Brady Shearer, your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host. We call him Father F1. It's Alexander Mills.
Hello.
And today we're answering some of your toughest questions about social media. Just a little housekeeping before we kick that off. I want to encourage you to go and watch one of our most recent YouTube videos. It was all about disposable camera photography for churches. We went to Australia. We visited a couple of churches in person. We handed them these disposable photo cameras and said, take photos. We're going to make some cool content out of them. And we show you how to do this as a church. We don't live near any good developing places. So we actually put these cameras in the mail. We sent them off. We get the digital scans back. We made content out of it. Lots and lots of fun. So go check that out. And we're going to talk a lot about social media on this episode today. If you want to work directly with us, head to socialsermons.com. We have 5 open spots each month. You can book a call with me directly on that page, and we can figure out if we're a good fit for one another. Alexander, please kick us off with the first question.
I will. Folks writing us all the time with questions about social media, so we kind of cherry pick some of the more unique ones for today's show. This first one's asking about the idea of a banner on an Instagram grid. So when you land on an Instagram grid, selecting the first 3 kind of top pin posts to look like a cohesive banner. So they ask, do you have any tips for a pinned banner? One of my main goals right now is to make a banner so that the profile page is more welcoming. Have you made any of these before? One of my thoughts is that I could make it like a modular banner, making the last square interchangeable so that it can be kept up to date. And I can just make a regular post with the correct background so that it seamlessly matches the rest of the banner. Wondering whether you have any experience or insight on this.
Yeah, so undisputedly, this idea is cool. The thought of having 3 grid, so 3 posts side by side at the very top of your grid, so taking up a full row, and then the final of the 3 on the right being interchangeable,
right,
so that it could always, yes, creatively it's a cool idea. I just want to share some metrics from my own Instagram. In the last 30 days, my content has 811,000 views, reaching 232,000 accounts. Do you want to guess how many profile visits that I have?
Not 232,000.
11,000.
Okay.
11,000 profile views to 811,000 content views. Meaning, I have 73 times more content views than profile visits. If you're listening and the numbers seem very big to you in the first, don't worry about that. Think about the multiplier.
Right.
73 times more content views than profile views. The issue that I have with churches prioritizing the grid or doing this, albeit creative, expression of a banner that is a compilation of multiple posts is that it prioritizes the part of your page that is not the main attraction on Instagram. And what it does, is it invariably means you're going to make decisions that prioritize the integrity of this banner over what is going to be most effective on your feed. And even if you're able to thread the needle of creating a post that is effective on feed and effective on grid, you still approached it creatively and content-wise from the position of how can I make this work with the grid, which is a fun, cool, creative thing to do, but it's focusing on this tiny, tiny part and you're neglecting the actual responsibility that you have on Instagram.
This is not the first time we've had this conversation. This is the first time it's been asked in this context about, those 3 pin posts making a banner. Again, really cool creative idea. But folks have been doing creative expressions using the grid for a long time. I remember it was actually one of my first creative projects here 8 years ago when making, 9x9 or 3x3. So a 9 image grid on Instagram was actually pretty popular. I spent days worth of work at this real company making this photo grid of all of our camera gear and a big drone in the middle. We were measuring pixels, doing this whole thing. And that was a fun creative project. And we were really proud of it, but it didn't account for anything back then. And that type of creative work is actually going to account for less now in this age of discovery algorithm. So I hear what you're saying, and I totally agree with you that, if you're a creative super genius, you may be able to thread the needle to pull this off. But for most folks, creating content that is finding itself at the intersection of faith and culture is hard enough for folks on social media that you shouldn't be putting too much effort, taking effort away from that to pull off something like this.
Yeah, and usually what happens is we see these types of things on like really popular accounts.
Yes.
I saw it from a celebrity the other day, and for the life of me, I can't remember who it was or why I even searched her up on Instagram. I remember it was, I can't recall.
Yeah.
But I was looking at the likes on each of her posts, and they were like, just in the insane numbers. Like they had like 17 million followers, something like that. And then at the top, she had creative directed for a brand, and she had made the top a banner.
Okay.
And I went in there, and yeah, each post had like 60,000 likes, but that was like down from her normal 4 million.
Right.
Because like that wasn't what people are
Yes.
looking for.
Yeah.
And you can see that and be like, wow, what a good creative expression. But like you can also see like it wasn't effective in terms of like maximizing reach on the platform. And for churches that do not have 18 million followers and do not have the luxury to basically like, play creative funness on our social platforms, we have to always prioritize mission over method. And in this case, this fun little method cannot take the place of mission, and it will. Invariably, you will make choices that prioritize this over mission. That is not what we are called to do.
Okay, very quickly, bonus question. What 3 posts should churches pin to those 3 places on the grid if they're going to pin anything on their Instagram account?
Great question. You should pin your most popular posts.
Okay.
Because people have voted with their time, attention, and engagement, have said, we like this. It's the best thing that you do. And also, by the way, you don't need to use a fancy banner. Highlights still exist on Instagram.
Right.
Highlights exist for you to promote things. If you go to my Instagram, you will see promotions for the Pro Church Scholarship that we have and our master classes and our products in the highlights. I'm going to use the highlights for that because Instagram has created that feature. We don't need to invent that feature and misuse the core feature to use it for that.
All right, next question. How do you create engagement with followers, pardon me, with a new church Instagram page?
So the great thing about the era of social that we're in right now is that any account of any size can reach any amount of people.
Yeah.
So the question here I would push back on, it's like you don't actually need to do anything differently as a new account versus an established account. Yes, the great thing about a church is unlike a new brand account that has like 0 following, like promote it in church and say like, hey, like we have a new Instagram account. It's important to us. If you're on Instagram, follow us. In the next 30 days, one of you that follows us, we're going to give a $25 gift card to like the local Mexican restaurant that everybody loves.
Yeah.
Do that. Great. Like, that's a timeless strategy of cross-platform promotion where you already have an audience in real life as a church and you want to reach them on Instagram. If you had a Facebook account, I would do the same. If you had an email list, I would do the same. But aside from that, in terms of reaching audiences on Instagram, you will not be penalized for being a smaller account.
Right.
In fact, you might get a little bit of an extra boost. The head of Instagram has come out and said, like, we want to prioritize smaller platforms and smaller channels and smaller accounts. We don't want them to feel like they cannot reach new audiences. We're going to get to church plants on social in a later question. That's when you would want to have a different approach to social before you're meeting in person and actually like having church like church. If you're having church like church, it doesn't matter if you're a big account or a small account, the approach remains the same. And I would point you to the Church Social Media Masterclass on our YouTube channel. It's an hour, it's in depth, and it goes through everything that I would recommend that you do.
We've been critical about jumping on viral trends for the sake of jumping on viral trends.
Sure.
What do you think about this circumstance? You think it would be an opportunity to jump on a viral trend or two to give yourself a chance to have a, jump on a train that's already moving when you're starting a new Instagram page?
I mean, if that were true, I don't think it would change for a new page or an existing page. Like, as long as the trend intersects with your church's values and makes sense, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, I'll use the example from 2 summers ago, the Wes Anderson Your Life trend. Yeah, do that on a Sunday morning. That's really cool. But it might be a trend that doesn't fit at all. And I have seen churches try to force it.
Right.
And that's when it's like, that's a bit, it's engagement farming a little bit, and it feels too detached from mission.
All right. Next question. For any account of any size, how frequently should you be posting?
So, important thing to understand about the era of social that we're in right now. And we did a recent YouTube video called Exposing Church Social Media Myths. Another video that we'll plug on our main Brady Shearer YouTube channel. And we kind of talk through in that about things that churches misunderstand. It's worth watching that for the context of what I'm about to say. And then also, a couple weeks ago, we did the Church Social Media Trends for 2025 episode on the podcast. And what was the main trend in there? it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So what that means is like this, what I'm about to describe is not anything new, but I still think churches are getting the hang of it,
Yes.
7 years into this new era of social where the lifespan of a social media post is not 24 to 48 hours, which is how it was in the first 10 years of social, which is why back then it really mattered if you published at 9:30, 8 a.m. because maybe most of your followers were online at that time. And it was critical that you grab their attention if they were on the platform. Nowadays, like, yeah, don't publish at 1 a.m., sure, when everyone's asleep and you're in the Eastern time zone and you publish that. But if you publish something good, people will find it. And the lifespan of a post could be weeks or even months.
Honestly, yeah.
And so what that means is frequency matters a lot less because what we're looking for in terms of growing our account are viral for me posts. Viral for me post, any piece of content we publish that reaches 10x the audience of a typical post of ours. Only 3 to 5% of your posts are going to fall into that category. So don't get it twisted. Like a viral for me post is not a common thing. 3 to 5% of your posts hit that qualifier. Of course, the more posts you publish, the more at-bats you have, the higher the likelihood that you have a viral for me post. But you can't just publish junk. So in terms of actual numbers, you can publish as few as 2 times per week. That will achieve our no weeks off demand, which is the most important, singular, non-negotiable of social. You can go all the way up to multiple times a day. I've never got there. I'm right around like 5 times per week at this point. Last year I was at 4 times per week. I've gotten every year I get a little bit better. So I'm at like 5 times per week right now. Maybe your church could get to 7. I would say for the vast majority of churches, you're in between that 2 and 7 times per week on the platforms you care about. And that doesn't mean you're on every single platform. We're going to have a question later on about Facebook. Like we're getting to the point where like if you're on a platform and you're doing everything right and it's just like you're not seeing traction, and you have other platforms that are really succeeding, like I don't know if I want to waste my time on a platform that just like doesn't want to love me back.
Yeah, totally. And we've said it so many times on this show, but it's very possible that someone's hearing it for the first time on this episode, or maybe actually hearing it for the first time on this episode.
Thanks, Bishop.
It's the no weeks off kind of axiom that is the key to success, algorithmic success on social the way it is right now in this discovery era. And that should be an encouraging word for churches to hear, that you don't have to post every day. In fact, you probably shouldn't post every day. But as long as you're posting at least twice a week, which for a lot of churches, because we are posting on the back of this major piece of content that we're not responsible for creating, or most of us aren't responsible for creating. A sermon is getting preached in your church likely every week. That's a huge piece of content that you can chop up and repurpose. Because churches have that every week generally, 2 posts a week is not that big of an ask. And you can post as many times as you want as long as the quality is high. But the no weeks off thing should be really encouraging to churches to hear that's a sustainable pace for just about. I pastor a small church, like a tiny little church here in Niagara, and so I know the feeling of the pressure of like, I got to post something on social, But no weeks off, not no days off. No weeks off should be encouraging to just about everyone listening. And it's a path to success in this era of social media. Okay, you mentioned the church plant. So this question comes in. We're planting a church starting in April. What do you think we should be doing right now?
So there are a few archetypes of social media content that just always win and always work. And one of these surefire archetypes is like, we're building something new and launching it.
Yes.
We're going to take you behind the scenes of that. So an example, someone like is building a house. Like, whoa, I'm building my dream home. And every month I give you an update on what we've built so far. Yeah. Like
I cannot stop watching.
Always wins. Yeah. When we were doing our church building, every time we'd publish about like, hey, here's an update on the building. Oh yeah. High performer every single time. Yeah. So as a church plant, you often feel like we don't have live services. We don't have live sermons. We are at a disadvantage. On the contrary, you have something that very few churches have unless they're in the middle of a building project, is that you have something, we're launching something new. Let's take you behind the scenes. So this could be as simple as, You know those people that stand outside some churches with signs that go like, "We love you, welcome to church, parking lot this way." Oh, today we got our signs. We're like opening up the box because the signs got delivered, or we're picking up the printed signs. Like, and you just do a quick reel of that.
Easy.
Like, now you're bringing me into the story of the launch, which makes me more aware of the launch, which makes me that much more likely to participate when the launch actually happens. Take us behind the scenes. Yes, you don't have sermon content. This is the same with churches that are like, we don't have the resources of businesses. Like, right, but like no business has their senior leader creating an entire message every single week that you can repurpose. You have a huge advantage. Church plant, huge advantage. Lean into that. Soon that'll be gone. And soon you'll be like every other church, repurposing sermon content.
Yeah.
So that season will come. The season you're in right now is so special.
We did that strategy when we were building our coffee trailer. We built this mobile cafe and we were having it built. So I would just document the process and share it with our Instagram followers. And similarly to a church plant, what's so great about that is, sure, the posts generally perform well, which is good, but that's not the goal, is for the post to go off. The goal is for people to take the next step. And when it comes to a coffee trailer where you're eventually going to be able to come and buy coffee, or when it comes to a church plant when you're going to eventually be able to come and worship, when folks get invested in the journey of something like that, when it's done, they want to be able to experience what they were invested in the whole time. And so for us, it was like, yeah, we've watched you build this coffee trailer. I want to come and see it. I want to see the actual scale of it. I want to taste your coffee. And the same thing for this church plant. It's like, you've hooked me into the journey, which is great. I've enjoyed it, but now I want to see it in real life. And so that could really translate into quite a few folks coming to visit for your first Sunday in April.
Also, if you're not a church plant and you're listening, this can work for any church. Alex this year launched like his beehive ministry.
Yes.
Okay, 30 seconds on what it actually was.
We have a big plot of vacant land on our property. We didn't want to develop it. We wanted it to be protected nature. So we got involved with a local beekeeper and said, "Hey, do you want to bring some of your bees to our property?" He's like, "Absolutely, I'd love to." So we documented the journey of him bringing his beehives to the church property, and it remains some of our best performing social content. So what you're about to say is, you're doing stuff all the time, whether it's prepping for the Christmas service that we just left in the past, or Easter's looking forward, or you're doing a building project, or you're painting the kids' rooms, or you got beehives, or literally whatever. For us last summer, it was picnic tables. We were raising money to buy picnic tables. Then we were putting the picnic tables together. Then we were finally having church picnics. It's like churches are doing this stuff all the time, so that behind the scenes look into what you're doing is not just going to be good performing social content, which it will be, but it's going to translate very likely into more next steps.
100%.
I just lost our note, but I am back
in a big way,
in the good place. Who should be in front of the camera staff-wise?
One of our social media principles is congruency. So what are you doing in person? How does that inform what happens online? Who's on stage the most at church?
Right.
That's who should be on stage the most online. Congruency. Now, if you want to go in a completely different direction for a purpose, and you're like, yeah, we're going to have an actual person who's the face of our online, and yeah, like they're not the pastor, they're not the leadership team, and you're intentionally doing that because of bandwidth, because of passion, because of skill set, sure. But generally speaking, it's just about congruency. We don't need to overcomplicate this. The person on stage at church is likely the person that's most on stage on the platform. And so if you're repurposing sermon content and you're publishing 2 sermon reels a week, which is our recommendation, you wouldn't want to go too much more than that. If you want to go 1, that's fine too. That pastor and the person on stage is going to be platform on your social platforms. So that congruency is there built in. So it's pretty cut and dry in that sense.
If you're not doing sermon clips, like our church is not, because we don't record our services, what do you say to the social media manager who's like, okay, but my senior leader says they're not comfortable on camera?
I mean, they're comfortable on stage.
Right.
So I would say it's not about comfort. It's about mission and objective. So in all things, we approach it from our values, right? Like you and I do everything, things every day as parents and as husbands and that are not our preference or our comfort.
Sure.
But we do them because of our values. And we actually get joy in those things over time. Even when they're uncomfortable at first because of our values and because of like our love for people. So if you love your church and this is the value that you have and the mission that you have, then this is the expression of the mission. I'm not comfortable. I don't have that skill set. Okay, but like you will in like 30 days. And also nobody has that skill set or has comfort with any new skill ever. So none of those reasons to me are very good. that does not dismiss at all the power dynamic between you as a person who's under that
Sure.
pastor and be like, well, actually, I don't care. I get that, which is why tactfully you always want to approach things from a mission standpoint.
Yeah.
And so if you approach it in that way and you describe it that way, at the very least, you've done your job and presented it in a, hey, this is the way of being faithful to the mission. If we're going to go in a different way, we have to then explain how this other option is equally, if not more so, faithful to the vision, or why we're just saying like, we're not going to do it this way.
Yeah, that's super helpful. All right, moving on. Why has our Facebook engagement drastically dropped? Our staff rarely even sees posts until I text them to go directly to our page and look for them. Our engagement was great and then very quickly slowed down.
Frankly, I don't know what's happening on Facebook. I noticed, I didn't pick up on this until months after, that I kind of just stopped publishing on Facebook last year. We have 30,000 followers on Facebook for Pro Church Tools. And I just like stopped publishing because like the reels there didn't perform as well on our reels on Instagram, which is owned by Meta. And you can turn on the feature of allow Facebook to recommend when you publish on Instagram. So I was like, okay, bases covered there. I can't post carousels on Facebook.
Which is a big part of your social strategy.
So what am I using Facebook
Right.
for? What am I publishing for? The Facebook group.
Yeah.
We have Facebook group for Nucleus Insiders, for those that use our platform. That's what I use Facebook for. I don't even know whose content I'm seeing on Facebook. It's not people I care about.
Right.
It's not even a good tailored algorithm for me. I never log on to Facebook anymore.
Yeah, it's not
because I stopped having reasons to go there. And so this could just be my experience. But what we have known for
Certainly
years,
the experience of people our age, I think.
exactly. And Facebook's growth has like dramatically slowed. They don't really care because they have Instagram, which is like on top, and they have WhatsApp. And so like they've made acquisitions that for them are, massive. Zuckerberg announced recently that they're like loosening on certain types of speech that they had cracked down on. I would not suggest that this is the underlying thing, but like maybe your church was not getting as much distribution because like you were in like the religion category. So like maybe you try it again. Like, but I think just broader, Facebook's just like not it anymore. Instagram still exists and is massive, and discovery there is huge. Our Instagram account grew 48% in 2024.
Wow.
And we started with 90,000 followers. So we were an established account.
Yeah, a mature account of
10 years.
10 years, yeah.
And we grew 50% because of how great discovery is there right now. We have 150K on YouTube, and we only grew, I think, 9% there. We didn't publish as much because YouTube videos are a lot more involved.
Yeah.
This channel, the Pro Church Tools Show channel, grew like 5x, but like from 1K to 5K. So like that's not comparable because it was not as mature of a channel. So I wouldn't sweat too much on Facebook, but groups groups can still be good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last question for today's show. What do we do with bad comments on our church's Instagram page?
You delete them.
We'll talk to you next week.
Previous era of social, bad comments came in. They were probably 1 degree of separation to your church. So if you deleted that comment, if you hid that comment, then someone could be upset. It's like, oh, my uncle saw something on our church. And then he said my comment was deleted.
Yeah.
Is that true? Like he doesn't come to our church. But in the discovery era, you are connecting your church to people that are far from you physically, that are far from you worldview wise. And so what happens is vulgar comments come in. Vulgarity is where I draw the line. Vulgarity does not necessarily just mean 4-letter words.
Right.
Vulgarity is like, we know it when we see it. If the comment is vulgar, I delete it. Simple as that. There's nothing to gain by like, well, engagement. It's like, no, like what we do with behavior is we watch something, we go straight to the comments. So people are going straight to the comments and they're seeing vulgarity. It, one, looks bad on you because it's like, oh, people disagree with this. Maybe I should disagree with this. And two, it's just not a good experience for people that like, let's say you love Jesus and you're like, oh, what are people saying? Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
And so I just delete those comments. The question was bad comments, comments that are critical, comments that are pushing back on the big idea. Those come in all the time for me. And I don't know if that's what this person is referencing as bad comments. I like to respond to those comments. I like to sometimes pin a critical comment because maybe they're asking a question that the reel or the post in question didn't fully answer.
Especially if it's one of your viral for me posts.
And this gives me an opportunity to like provide more clarity or more context that was missing from the post. That's great. But vulgarity, nah, it's just not worth it.
There you go.
And you're worth it. Pro Church Tools listener, thank you so much for your time, attention, and trust. We'll talk to you next Wednesday.
I know enough to know that you can't call me that.
Yeah.
I don't know everything.
I don't know. I don't know everything either. And what I do know is like, oh, I don't know. That kind of scares me.
Yeah.
Don't put that in. Okay.